Our next talk is by Nico Hagenburger, Incredibly Fast Web Apps Without Touching. Yeah, I think the talk is not about me, it's about comics. So, hello, I'm talking about incredibly fast web apps without touching Ruby too much. So we heard a lot about Ruby today. So, this is me. You can find me on Hagenburger everywhere in the internet. It's like at least Twitter, GitHub, Facebook, and all the others. If you've checked my Twitter profile yet, you might have noticed there's some pink-haired guy, but we turned into some issue. Like there's another pink-haired speaker today, and he was first on the list. So what I did yesterday while preparing the slides is going down here in the shopping mall, and I turned it to purple. So you can remember that's me. Yeah. So speaking of purple. One thing I did is like, oh, this is not a good purple on this screen, but imagine this would be purple. This is one of the conferences we have in Berlin, where I'm from. I did the whole organization, the whole design and a bit of organization over there. So thanks a lot to all who organized here. I really appreciate this is a lot of work to do. And good job so far. Something else I'm doing is I do a lot of front-end development, and mostly I work with style guides, so all the work I did, I put into an open source project, also called Living Style Guide. You can find it everywhere on the internet, and it's the thing which makes the most fun to me, and I stay entertained about, and helps me a lot with my work. Another thing I'm doing is, if you've heard of the Railsfeld Summer of Code, this is a nice project for getting more women into coding. I was a mentor last year with the Living Style Guide project, and it might be this year again. So, a little announcement. You have 2 days to apply over there if you're a team of 2 women, and it's ending Sunday night. So, if you have any questions, ask me later. It's really great. Do it. And sometimes I have to earn money, so I'm doing some freelance, front-end, whatever, for those 2 startups in Berlin right now. It's one for interior design and one for buying cinema tickets online, which is still an issue in Germany. We are a bit behind. Okay, back to the talk. I heard some time ago Ruby is slow. That's always this bad thing about. I think this might not be true. Actually, over the last versions of Ruby, I think there was incredible speed improvement, and I just want to say thank you for all the speed improvement. Ruby is not slow anymore. Ruby can really, really fast, and some things is like 30% faster right now. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I don't want to talk about this. Today we want to talk about how to speed up applications without touching actually Ruby too much. So, even if you have a PHP application, I'm not talking about money, most of the things I'm talking about will be the same. So first we need to know which part of our application actually is slow. Yeah, we had Ruby might be slow, we don't want to talk about it. Rails is very related to Ruby, I don't want to talk about it too much, a bit. The next thing is the database. Yeah, very often this might be slow, but indeed, databases are extremely fast. It's more your queries which are slow. Your connection very often is slow. I experienced this in the last days of it. Might be your location wherever you are. There's another thing, somewhere between Berlin and Manila, there's Beijing. You might have heard of the Great Firewall. So everything outside of China is very slow when you're in China. Some more common things is especially blocking elements which stops rendering at all. And the last thing, or not the last thing, at least on my list, is flickering. This is actually not a speed thing, but there's something between like a website could be slow, you can measure it, or it just feels slow. And flickering is one thing which makes you feel the website is really slow, but maybe you cannot measure it. And let's start to make it faster. Let's start with simple things like the HTML. And the most simple thing to speed up at least Rails applications is, hey, use ERB. I really like HAML. HAML is really cool for your coworkers. You have a syntax which is easy to read, and if you have commits, it's so easy to merge them because the syntax helps for that. ERB does not, but ERB speeds up a lot of views, and if your application is already fast, this makes a difference. If your application is slow, you react in 1 second, maybe you can use HAML, it doesn't add a lot. So, but Ruby helpers might still be faster. Another thing which is a bit more complicated, you can put some CSS directly into the page itself. So you don't need to load a second file, it's just there. And there are some cool new feature coming up in Chrome. Looks a bit like this. So we have some CSS in the header, which defines some base layout. And then we have several links to style sheets, and they won't break the page anymore like before. They will render the page until the link appears. So you can have the basic thing here, then this file is loaded, and then the header appears, and so on. Especially if things down the fold, this might be super interesting. So you can load various small files, which are good for your mobile connection and everything else, and when you scroll down, it will be there, but you don't notice it. If you measure it, it's pretty slow, but it feels very fast. And one very simple thing is always use image sizes. This reduces flickering a lot, it reduces the rendering in the browser time, and it's pretty easy to do. So just do this. And the same is with CSS width and heights. If you know how big some element is, just define it. It will render faster. But now the more complicated things. You want a faster delivery of everything. So the easiest thing is you all use jQuery. So we can just deliver jQuery via Google. A lot of websites actually do this. It's faster. Google knows how to do this. But we have a little problem. When I was in Beijing, this is one of my projects. It looked like this for a while. So when Google is not accessible, at least in the Great Firewall, it's not blocked with an error message. It just does not react. It won't react for minutes. So your website will never get to a fallback. Even if you have a fallback to a local version of jQuery, it will never reach it. So think about if Google is a good idea. Maybe Google is also blocked in some companies for some data security issues. I'm from Germany, and privacy is very important for us. But we don't want only to focus on the assets. Assets might be very easy to start with, but if we can cache the whole page, that's really fast. So back in the 90s, we just wrote each page HTML per HTML. It was pretty slow, but it was only slow because we didn't have the right servers and a good connection. But nowadays, if you have a static website, it's extremely slow. But why not do this with our Rails application? It just works the same thing. So Rails itself offers something like page caching, which is pretty nice and a good start, but it has some downsides. So if you have more than one server, more than one domain, it's not working very well. You're doing a lot of configuration. It's a good start, but it's just okay. And it's using the same server. So if you have a server which is just made for serving assets, they can do a much better job than a server which also handles Rails. So maybe we don't want to have the same server for it. Next choice is maybe we could use Varnish. There's one big advantage of Varnish. It has a very cute logo. So you get attracted to it, and it's actually a pretty good one. It has some downsides for me, related to something personal. Do you know how to do it? Actually, I don't know. Do you want to maintain it? I definitely don't want to. I'm somebody who loves building up new products. I want to focus to do the best product. And maintaining another service, which is a bit out of my scope, is nothing I want to do. And maybe I will fail to do so if I not want to do this. And next question is it close to your customer? So if you just put a varnish in front of your Rails application, then it's still at the same server room, so it will take the same distance to your customers. So the better step, from my perspective, is we use a content delivery service which somebody offers really as a professional service. We have some CDN providers. They know what they do. That's good. Some people have fun optimizing this over and over, and I really know they know how to do this, and yeah, they will do it better than I will do it. They have several servers. They might deliver from many locations, which is important. If you have a really fast website, it makes a difference where the website is delivered from. Do you want my website delivered from Germany or maybe from somewhere in Manila? It's definitely faster then. Downsides, they can get pretty expensive, several thousand euro, let's say 50,000 PHP per month might be normal. And bad experience for myself, their limits are easier to hit if you have a big application. Then you have to think about if all the contracts are good for you. I will go in detail a bit to this. A good thing is always to be close to your clients. So you have to know where your clients are. If you look at the world, this is where I'm from. It looks a bit like I'm in the center of the world. And if we look at this, this is what I found out in the first research about CDNs. Most CDNs are in the center of the world, which is here. If we try a bit, I was waiting for 10 years to apply this effect to any of my talks, so finally I made it. So now I'm living somewhere in the corner out there, and the center of the world, for most people in this room, might be here. We had some similar requirements. So at Hagenburger, where we set up a CDN, the other map is all the countries where we have active domains and web services online. And we chose Cloudflare. This is where the servers are located. And if you look at both maps, it matches quite well. So we gained a lot of speed improvements, especially in countries like Japan or South America, where our website was really slow, by having everything very close to the customer. And this is a big advantage for us. So if you're an international service, it might be good for you. So for CDN locations, is it just Europe and North America? I think Fastly was one of them, but maybe they've changed, so I don't want to say too much. Do you want the whole world? Inside, outside of the Great Firewall might be very important if you have Chinese customers. Everything inside might be much faster. And do you want to include the Philippines? I did a little research, and I think Akamai and Meta CDN seem to have their servers in the Philippines. Maybe more, maybe you know about this. That was just a very quick research. You want maybe to have cache syncing. So one thing we found out is, like when we access the second time any page of our web server, it was super fast. But if we did the same thing from other location, it was slowing in because it was only cached close to our place. Maybe bad. So if the CDN syncs it caches, so the second request gets to one of their cached servers and it doesn't hit your application, of course it's much faster. Purge request. So this is a complicated purge. It's pretty simple to explain. We just want to have one URL removed from the cache. Very simple, and the CDN provider needs to take care it's removed everywhere in the world. There are downsides. So we found out Cloudflare has strict API limits. I think it's about 1,000 purge requests per 5 minutes. We easily hit them, so some pages won't get cleared from the cache, which is really an issue. Imagine one of your customers changes their profile and loads it over and over, and it's still the same content. They might be very disappointed about that. We don't want that. Cloud front, so all the services are cloud, whatever. We have, I think, 3 services called cloud thing in our application. They charge per purpose request, which easily gets very expensive, but at least you don't have the problem that you run out of the limits. Yeah, but then we found out cloud per purchase within 30 seconds, which is good time. And cloud run, we didn't find out what's their normal time, but 30 minutes seems to be normal, and 30 minutes is just a lot. So we just don't want that. Now it's getting really complicated. User sessions. You might know everything about user sessions in Rails, and it's really amazing, but the CDNs don't know about your user sessions. Any page containing current user, or however you call it, is a big problem. Because if you call a URL, you don't know, is the user logged in, is it not logged in? It will just deliver the same page. So we need to find out how to handle this. That's a lot of work. But the concept is simple. You can include all content in one page. Everything which is logged in, everything which is logged out. And it works quite well. You just need to think in a completely different way. So if we're looking at some code here, I have 3 links. One is login, one is settings, and one is log out. So we only want to show them on the state of the current user. So I added some classes, like logged out, logged in, logged in. And then I just create some CSS, which hides in all the other cases this content. And then some JavaScript. However this works, we just get the user session here. You have to define this part yourself. And then I just add the class name logged in or logged out to the HTML element. And suddenly everything is only displayed for the logged in or the logged out user. And we can just render the same page, which is extremely fast. We don't have to have any application logic on the server anymore. So for our case, we had like a rendering time of 16 milliseconds for the HTML. You cannot do anything else like this. So you use your client's CPU a bit, but I think that's okay. Just a little tip. Don't show the things, hide the others. Don't use display block to show the logged in content. Just use display none to hide the other ones. Just display block is not the opposite of display none. Yeah, but it's getting a bit more complicated. Sometimes we have user-related content. You don't only want to have some content which is depending if you're logged in or logged out. It might depend on your user ID, but also this is easy to do. So in this case, we are on the user number 23's profile. We have a link edit profile, and we have a link contact user. So for everybody on this page, they might want to contact them, except the user itself, you want to edit the profile. So this looks really complicated. You don't need to understand the CSS for this, but actually we have the user ID stored in our session. However, we retrieve this, but it's there. And we just add some CSS which hides everything in all the other cases. It basically works like the login, log out thing. It just looks a bit more complicated. I'll just show the result of this. So we add the user ID to the HTML element, and then we have the display none for handling all those cases. If you've done it once, it works. Here. If it looks complicated, yes, but we want to have speed. And this was maybe the biggest freak improvement we ever did to our application. We went down from some pages about a second, other were like half a second, to really 15 milliseconds. We can live with that. And we have a free bonus. If you do all those things, you can log in and log out on one page without leaving the page. You just need to switch to CSS classes. Done. Okay, next one. The database. I don't want to talk too much about the databases. I think you can talk hours about this, and I wouldn't call myself a database expert, but I want you to have a look at it, and it's easy to watch the logs actually. Rails does very good logs, and we've just seen in Rails 5 the logs get even better. Just read them. You can easily find out what is slow, and then work on that. So everything which is a millisecond is fast, everything which is more than 10 milliseconds you should have a look at. They were super simple things, but very often I don't see it. Use indexes. In normal SQL databases, an index helps a lot to speed up everything. We want to make cache calculated values. So if you have a score, sorting users by whatever, we don't want to have the score for the order by calculated every time we request it. Just store it as an extra field in the database, add an index on this field, and you will see a major speed improvement. And at the end, do some experiments. If a query is slow, try to think about any other way to write the same query, and maybe it's much faster. I did a lot of experiments like that, and at the end there were some queries I got down from 2 seconds to few milliseconds by just like thinking about how to rewrite it and cache some values in between. So it's maybe more worth to look at this than all the other things. But still, I wouldn't consider myself an SQL expert or something, but it helped. And I've got some tips for Rails applications or other applications. We can use remote partials. I call it like this. We cache the whole page, maybe an article, but we want to have some dynamic content. We have recommended articles below that. We maybe have the comments or global elements. If you have an article written once, you might never change them until you find a typo or you're proven you're wrong. But comments, or especially recommended articles, they change often. So you can cache them maybe for an hour, for a longer, as it matches your application, and just load them into this page. Send a link in there, do some XHR requests, and it's in. And the user might even not notice because they see like within a few milliseconds the whole page, and then below it they didn't scroll down, it just renders until they scroll down. It's pretty fast. And have your own caching strategies for that. That's how we implemented that. We just have an empty div and have a data remote partial in there and just the URL, and some JavaScript renders all those things. So once you set it up, it's very, very easy to use it. Another thing for very, very fast pages, don't check for user sessions. So we had, like on the cached pages, every photo had a like count, which is very usual, and many applications have that. But likes change so often. We don't want to clear the cache for this very slow photo page. So we do a second request, getting all the like counts. It was pretty fast, like 200 milliseconds, but it was checking for the user all the time. And so we had some skipping of the before filters. It was an old application. I think now it's before action. It got faster. Not a lot, but if you're down to 100 milliseconds, everything you do helps. So just do it. One thing, it just helps you not to clear the cache. Asset hashes. Usually we link our assets like this, which is also good for caching. But imagine this is in a cached page. So as soon as we deploy a new version, but the old cache page is still online, it links to an outdated CSS. It might still be available, but maybe then the next page links to another version. So for each page you load another version of the CSS, and maybe you've already fixed some things. You might not want to do that. So one possible solution is we just redirect it and we link, okay, sorry, my fault. We just link the URL without the hash and add a redirect to the hashed URL, which is pretty fast because this redirect is also cached by the content delivery network. so it doesn't take a lot of time and feels much faster than having to clear the whole cache and render it for your Rails or whatever you use. For helpers, sometimes plain HTML is faster, especially in blogs. For the link to helper, I experienced a lot when you have a lot of content in there. Just don't use the link to helper. Just write an HTML link. It's better for the application a bit, and so especially in the header and footer, I did this because they're called every time. So, but I would only do this in some special cases where it's slow and they're called very, very often, because otherwise the Rails helpers might be more easy to read. And yeah, Rails has a cache helper. You might already know this, just a reminder to use this. Something I've also seen, this is a very good piece of code, just with have a few, because some people love CoffeeScript, have a two-line of CoffeeScript. Every time you call this page, the CoffeeScript compiler needs to run to compile this to normal JavaScript. Just don't do this. JavaScript is not that complicated. You can still use CoffeeScript for all your assets. It's not a problem. They're compiled only once when you deploy, but don't do this in a live page. And avoid too many URLs. Each URL is cached itself, so having another URL requires you to get a fresh version from the server. This might be a slash at the end. Rails usually handles this quite well. We have different versions of images. We have maybe some Google campaign, or we have just a different order of that. Some CDNs actually can handle this, so usually the order of the arguments is not a big option. You can just turn off some extra tool at the CDN which reorders them, so they will get cached alphabetically all the time. For the UTM campaigns, we had to request our CDN to handle this, to just skip them. A word about this here, CSRF token. I really can't pronounce this one. Don't include this in the cache pages. It might be a security risk, because the user who is currently logged in will put the CSRF token into the cache pages, and all the other users will get this. And when another user tries to get it, they might get logged out of the application, which is not good. Rails doesn't do a good job there. Just remove it, and you need to load it via JavaScript. Then it works much better. So, yeah, I should test this in Rails 5. I just heard there are some changes. I don't know. Good. Okay, let's get into a summary. So within Ruby, we can cache results and partials. That's very important. Even though you do the whole page caching, you should cache everything you can do within your application. Sometimes avoid the blocks in HTML. Prefer ERB over normal slim, however. Skip unused code, like the user session checking for calls you don't need it. For caching, cache whatever is possible. The more cache, the better it is. It's just hard to handle. Choose a CDN matching to your requirements. Remotely load the parts which are dynamic afterwards. Be aware of uncached requests remain slow. So, same thing, like do other versions of caching. Improve your application. If you have a request which takes 5 seconds to render and 16 milliseconds if it's cached, at some point you will have the user who is the first one to get it. And this user might very often be Google. Because if you don't have a shared cache, Google always accesses the websites from the US. As you've seen in our map before, we don't have any server in the US, so don't we have any visitors from the US. So Google will always get uncached pages. So it's very important for us that the page is still very fast without caching. Yeah, setting the right headers for the browser is also important. The browser itself has a very good cache. You also seen in the talk before some examples how to do this, fresh when and so on. Have a look at this. You can still use this in combination with CDN. For JavaScript, don't use CoffeeScript and Views. And actually, use vanilla.js. I've been referring to jQuery before. It's actually a really bad example. Don't use jQuery at all if you don't need it. Just write plain JavaScript. For a lot of applications, this is fine. If you just want to enhance something, if you have a traditional Rails application, you can do almost everything with plain JavaScript. Unless you need a big application, need Angular, React, or however they're called, then maybe you need to load it, but try to keep simple. It's good. Use JavaScript for session handling and displaying content. And really be aware of Safari's private mode. I spent so many time, because I'm using always Safari. In private mode, we always have issues because local storage is not working well. And if you want to cache something the way I do it, you might need local storage to store all the session information. It won't work in Safari's private mode. So you at least need to have a fallback to retrieve the data every time you get to a new page. And I've got some bonus slide I didn't talk before. If you build a minimal valuable product with just a limited amount of features, that speed up your application a lot. If there are not a lot of features, there's nothing to slow you down. That's the most important. Just do it. Yeah, that's not all you can do. It's just a good start. I'm sure there's thousands of other things you can optimize. And if you have seen all the other talks about what to speed optimize in Ruby, just do this. It only works well if you have a combination of everything. And I've learned somewhere only speed up the bottlenecks. I think this is a good idea. And yeah, as fast as Ruby will get, not calling Ruby will always be faster. So just do it. So I hope I found this right. Is it okay? Yeah. If you have any questions, stand up now, or there's a lot of implementation details actually I skipped in there. This is just like a rough idea how it could work. If you want to know any details, you can always speak to me, and I feel like I need to write some blog posts how some of the parts work actually in detail. So, yeah. Any questions? Yes.
So yeah, I actually have a question. Regarding the front-end improvements, so you mentioned that you had an increase of performance. I wonder if you use any specific tool or service in order to measure and benchmark the performance of the application before and after the changes, or if you just use like the browser timeline view. And so I'd like to know a little bit more about that. If you also consider maybe like assets, or if the performance that you get were not considering assets. So you know there are a lot of details in that, and I was wondering.
Just for most of the caching thing I did, I just used the Chrome tools. It's just one number, but also it used Apache benchmark, so it's just the AB command to get some more numbers. As it just renders the HTML, you see such a big difference. If it's 1 second before and it's like 30 milliseconds afterwards, you don't really care about 1 millisecond more or less. You just notice it's much faster. Anything else? Okay, I'll be around today, tonight, tomorrow. Let me know if you think everything was stupid and you have better solutions, then especially let me know. Thank you.